everybody, it's Romania Black, and I didn't actually wait very long before watching this video. At least not, but like episode 33. Episode 33, I waited like 10 days of calming down before watching episode 34. I actually watched episode 34 a couple days ago, and after I got some comments in, I wanted to power through and go into episode 35, because as soon as I was done with the discussion, have you ever had those moments where you have a conversation with somebody and then like an hour later you're like, I wanted to say like 20 things more. That's how I felt about episode 34. I felt like there were extra bits and pieces about Akio and Anthy that I was trying to work through and think about. And then I started writing down notes at like 10 p.m. and being like, I need to talk about this. So that's where we're at. But we're on episode 35 of Revolutionary Girl Utena, and I'm just going to get started. I've got a comment from episode 31, several from episode 32. Episode 32 just came out on YouTube today, and episode 33 came out on Patreon today, and I'm not looking forward to the next couple weeks with those comments, but we'll cross those bridges when we come to them. But I wanted to make some notes. The notes from last episode that I had, talking about memory manipulation. And I'm sure that by this point, there's probably been comments about it that'll be in episode 34, but it's fine. Are we seeing memories tainted by Akio? I thought about this rewatching the episode, because he controls everyone that wears the ring. We've seen that in the sex car drive arc. We've seen that with Mikage. He seems like he has control through the ring. So are the memories that Utena has and the reason why she can't remember correctly because of the ring that was given to her, which is why Utena can't remember, because he won't let her. Also, the moment where Utena is sad for Anthy as she's suffering. What was interesting about that is that when Anthy, there was a thing where the prince, Dios, makes the comment that he can't be a prince anymore and he can't do anything princely, right? But in the moment where Utena is sad as Anthy is suffering, Dios literally wipes away her tears and acts like a prince, even though he shouldn't be able to do so. So, and then when she says that she'll be a prince for Anthy, Dios or Akio, whichever it is, or if it's both, is literally between her and Anthy. So what does that mean? To me, I feel like this is all, the memories are kind of tainted by Akio and he's controlling it. And I wonder if we're going to get a reveal that what we thought was the memory that puts the prince, aka maybe Akio, in such a positive light, if we'll get a chance to look back on that memory and it'll actually be not what Utena thought it was. Because in the barn scene, it looks so similar. The way that Akio is positioned with his shirt, the prince, Dios, is positioned with his shirt unbuttoned and Anthy is over the top of him or beside him. It's so similar to the scenes where Akio assaults Anthy in different places that it made me wonder, is this memory manipulation? And it's painting Akio or the prince in a more sympathetic light, or is Anthy just mimicking the actions from long ago with Akio when her brother was kind, but now it's twisted because Akio is evil? Is Dios her brother, or is the power separated, and is it separated from her brother and then he becomes Akio that way? My frustration last week was that it seems like they make everything Anthy's fault for having compassion and trying to sacrifice for her brother, and it's her fault that he was twisted into this toxic masculine form. And honestly, that's bullshit. So I was like, no, that's stupid. So I think that was my big frustration with last week, was I was like, why is it Anthy's fault that you turned out to be a terrible person? It's not. So that was where a lot of my frustration came from. And I'm sure some people last episode wanted me to be like, more sympathetic to Anthy. And I've gone over that in episode 34, so I'm going to leave it be. Tardy to the Party said for episode 31, now that I'm older, I think maybe the pauses in episode 31 that are really awkward with Nanami could be Nanami doing a double take, hearing double meanings in what people say and not quite believing what she's hearing. After the egg episode, basically saying she's going through puberty, she's transforming from a childish comic relief character into more of an adult. I definitely agree. I think that the egg episode was indicative of her period starting, which is traditionally viewed as like a transition of female puberty and you growing up into a woman. I definitely agree with that. I think that is hitting it on the head with that meaning in that moment with Nanami. So thank you for saying that. Lyndon in episode 32 says, Utena's dimness. is normally endearing, but here it's irritating. I wonder if Nanami thought Utena knew about the incest, but didn't care, and that's why she dueled her. Which I think we talked about that in discussion, but I agree with that. It's not made very clear in the conversation how Utena could have been that dense, at least in the translation. There's a part of me that thinks Utena has been that dense just overall in the series, but then there's another part of me that feels like Utena just doesn't want to face those truths, which could very well be the case. El Freya says for episode 32, I keep forgetting about the memory losses. But yes, I do fear that Nanami losing her memories after the duel, it seems to be the day after losing a duel that her memories get wiped away. Yeah, that is one aspect of the show that is so frustrating. Again, frustrating is that these characters don't remember shit. And I'm like, memory is such a important thing in narrative. It's such an important thing for characters. And for it to be tampered with, for it to be unreliable, for it to be lost, it is so frustrating. And it makes me have high blood pressure and be very nervous about the ending of this series. Then H Banana 7 asked this question in episode 32. What I'd like to know is why Nanami fought with one blade. She usually has two swords. And I hadn't honestly thought about it, but then Gloriana Tenebrae, with episode 32, replies with this. Nanami using one blade versus two. She had the sword and dagger in the first duel because she was planning to cheat. The dagger was hidden for a sneak attack. She used one blade this time because maybe she wanted to beat Utena fair and square. No one else has ever beaten Utena in a fair fight, so she's trying to regain her sense of importance by proving that she's better than every other duelist. That would make sense. That would align with her big speech when she gets to the top about doing what her brother could not do, and etc., and being special. So yeah, I think that could be the reason, but I'm glad you all kind of addressed that in the comments. And then Oliver Jajado says for episode 32, the commentary from Ikuhara is empathizing with Nanami. The romance of the dancing girls. As a child, I tried to run away from home several times. Usually it was for trivial reasons, like my parents throwing away a manga I loved or a plastic model. I wanted a place to belong. And I believed that place was somewhere else. Everyone needs to hear someone say, no one else will do, it has to be you. Sometimes in their lives, even if it only happens once. Just once is enough. As long as you can feel sure those words were sincere, you can live through anything, no matter how painful. She's seeking those words too. Yeah, I did the same thing when I was a kid. I remember there was between our farm and my house, there was like a half a mile stretch. I remember getting mad one day and being like, I'm going to run away. And I was maybe like 10 at the time. It was a different time back then. You could do that when you were out in the country. But I remember just walking away from home being like, I'm never coming back. And then like an hour later, I was like, I need to go back. But yeah, I do agree with it. And I think that it's not just Nanami who wants that place where she feels like she's needed more than anything else, like what Ikuhara talks about in the commentary. But you could argue that every character in this series is going through that. Mickey wants to have that. That's why he wants to go back to the nostalgic days where he felt that feeling, that presence. Then you have Juri. Juri wants that when she thought she had a chance with Shiori back in the past. And then Saionji, I feel like we're saving a lot of Saionji and Touga's motivations for the end because we started with them. We have to end with them. So maybe the next few episodes we'll get more of that. But I do feel that Saionji, he seems like he avoids it because Wakaba kind of wanted that too back when we got her episodes. And then with Utena, we saw in the last episode after her parents died, she really didn't think she had that place. And then, lo and behold, she makes the statement she's going to save Anthy, and the prince gives her the ring saying, well, one day maybe you'll be able to do that. But the more I think about that last episode, the more that it feels like it's all a manipulation, like it's all an illusion, that what Utena is remembering is not being remembered correctly. And I don't know how to feel about that. So, anyway, thank you all for the comments, and hopefully I dread to read the comments for 32 and 33. I'm not looking forward to it, but I appreciate you all leaving them. Hopefully you all are sympathetic. But in any case, I am excited to get into this episode and see what we get. So we just might as well dive in, right? Rip off the Band-Aid. In any case, we're going to start episode 35 of Revolutionary Girl Utena, and we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. I hope you all are as frustrated as I am watching this, because it's very frustrating. It's very frustrating, and I guess I don't know if there is, because there wasn't a duel before Utena was assaulted. We know that when people have duels, they tend to forget things. The absence of Nanami this episode, by the way, with Touga present, was not lost on me. I was like, where is Nanami? Where has she gone? Why is Touga, is Nanami not happy? Why does Touga seem like he's perfectly fine without her? This episode was so weird as a follow-up to 34, because 34, I was like, I have all these questions and things, but then this episode contradicts a lot of the things that I thought, that I was like, but why? So, okay. So we need to back up a little bit and talk about Akio and talk about Touga. And we'll put Touga over here. Right. Now, Nanami, who knows where she's at? I don't like the fact we've not seen Nanami. I don't like the fact we've not seen Juri or Miki. I mean, Saionji's here, but Saionji seems like he's helping Touga because Saionji wants to be in bed with Touga and just can't come out and say it. And so I'm like, so I get why Saionji is helping Touga. I feel better with Saionji there. Is that weird to say? Saionji, like, has gone from being a character that I absolutely loathed in the first couple of episodes to a character that I'm like, I'm glad you're here for some levity. So it's like, what? And then that last scene of him and Touga, I'm like, Touga, just admit you're gay and move on. Just admit you're gay and move on, please. I mean, they're practically coming out of the coffins. They're all three need to come out of the coffin. They need to come out of the closet, come out of the coffin, and admit that all three of them are queer, and we can have a good day and move on now. That's what we need to do. That's what we need to do. So, we go back to the story at the very beginning. Again, I have questions. So, is Akio Dios? Are they the same person? Is Dios just, we know Dios is a power. It is a power of, but it's like, did Akio transform into Dios because Anthy did a nice thing? The fuck? So I'm like, again, why can't he say, why can't Akio save Anthy? The short answer is probably because he doesn't want to, but why? Why can't he save her? That makes no damn sense. So then it's clear that so Akio wants Utena to be a princess, to be like she was the princess of the world as all of them were so many years ago, because he sees this desire, because he has this desire to save her and be her savior. Of course, at this point, it's all very twisted and evil and disgusting. So there's that. And then there's the idea that if Anthy saves him, that because Anthy saves him, he's like lost his masculinity, is what it seems like, which I don't know if I like that theme or not, but this was the 90s and we've progressed so much in terms of feminism and how we view like gender in media since then, that maybe because I'm viewing this, I'm not thinking of it as an old show or a show that was, I feel like I want to treat it like it's more, I mean, I'm sure at the time it was very progressive, but in light of now and media we have now, it seems a little dated in that regard, but I'm just frustrated and speaking out of anger probably. Anyway, again, we don't know why the prince says that she can't be loved by Dios anymore because he's no longer who he was. I guess with this memory, we don't know how long it's been or what the case may be. But in any case, Utena decides to become a prince and save Anthy. But she can't remember that. And again, why she can't remember it is very frustrating. And I feel like with all the stuff with Mikage going on, we don't know if they're all ghosts. We don't know what the case may be. We do have the idea with the three coffins that it's literally like a coming out of the closet representation of Saionji, Touga, and Utena need to come out of the closet, come out of the coffin, and realize that they're not heterosexual. Essentially. But and the fact that he's like, if you never lose your nobility when you grow up, then you might be able to save her. and from eternal torment. And that's when she says she'll become a prince. Now, here's my thing. So, Dios at the time, Dios wants Utena to save Anthy, or at least makes it seem like that's a possibility. Like that could be something that happens. But then we have Akio, who wants Utena to be his princess to gain this power. But he wants to drive her. He wants to drive her from Anthy. And I don't exactly understand, like, is he suggesting he's like, oh, you all are friends now, but once I get you to be my princess, then you'll be like everybody else and you'll hate Anthy, because that's how it works. Everybody hates Anthy because she protected Dios. So, but that is in direct contrast with what Dios said to her in the flashback. So it's very confusing. Like, did Dios change from when he said that to Utena and became Akio, who has a very twisted and totally different plan? Or were Dios and Akio separate from the start? Or how does that, like, we don't have, again, enough puzzle pieces to finish the puzzle. And this episode was so frustrating. It was so frustrating. It wasn't quite as frustrating to the level of episode 33, but it was very frustrating. So then we have Touga. Now, to be fair to the show, Touga has been hinted at being someone that would be interested in Utena from the start. That has been there. It's always been in the background that he's always been possibly interested in Utena, that's possibly been a thing since the very beginning. But he's this playboy, but there's this idea that he wants what he cannot have. And he thinks that is Utena, but he also acknowledges that he wants power. And that's why he wants to be like Akio, because he sees that Akio has power. Now, of course, we, the audience, are like, but Akio is also an asshole and horrible as a person. So just because he has that power doesn't mean you should aspire to be like him. But nobody's telling Touga that. And also, it could be the fact that he cannot love because he's not interested in women. And again, Utena has been portraying herself as a more stereotypically masculine woman, which Touga would like because he likes men. Kind of hinting at that. And then when he sees Akio trying to change Utena, then he's like, well, that's not good. And he wants to become Utena's savior. So him and Saionji have this plan. Him and Saionji are like, well, we're the ones that saw her at the beginning when she was in the coffin. We were there from her at the beginning with Akio and all that. So we need to finish and defeat her. But we're defeating her for her own good, to save her from Akio. That's why we need to defeat her, which oddly enough is a different motivation than anybody in this series so far. Everybody else in the series that has fought Utena have fought Utena for the sake of themselves or for the sake of someone else. But Utena's defeat was benefiting them or that person. Here, Touga kind of frames it as, whether it's misguided or not, or whether he truly believes it or not, he frames it as, he tells Saionji, he says, I need to defeat Utena to save her from Akio. And then once I can revolutionize the world, maybe I'll have the power and you and I can just have blowjobs all over the place. And Saionji's like, yes, I would be totally down for that. That's why I'm going to help you. And there's some other hints of that as well in this. But I mean, I don't know very many heterosexual men that would be getting all well, I can't say that. Being with Akio in this moment. We'll say, though, the lights of the lanterns as they pass by Touga are triangular, which is typically a queer representative symbol, so whatever. But yeah, they are the headlights there. So Utena frustrates me to no end. Utena frustrates me to no end. And I swear, I know you all cannot spoil me, but she frustrates me on two fronts. And maybe you all know the answers to these questions and these fronts, but you can't tell me because they're spoilers. And so I will suffer in commentary. I'm not going to suffer in silence. I'm going to suffer in discussion until we get resolution with it. But her not remembering is so frustrating. It is, and I would forgive that more than the other part, because she is on the brink of it. We've had the same, again, the cross, the window panes. We saw that back in the Mikage arc. It's come back in this. Like, she keeps seeing these repetitive images. This image of Anthy getting skewered on the hill, that part was Anthy as an adult getting skewered. So again, we don't know if Utena's a child when this happens in the memory, or if that's just her memory being tainted by Akio and this whole time loop and her being an Otari. We don't know, because Otari has messed with everybody's timeline. So we don't know the full story, and we won't know probably till episode 39. Or even the movie, maybe. Who knows? But regardless, it is frustrating watching her almost remember and not remember. It's a different kind. When she says never mind and it's nothing, it's a different type of frustration from when Anthy says it. When Anthy says it, it pisses me off, because I'm like, you know, Anthy, but you choose not to say. And I know that she's afraid of Akio for whatever reason. I'm like, you're the one that saved him. Why are you afraid of him? Blah. But again, I'm sure that somebody would be like, well, you know, she's been abused by him and she doesn't feel like she has any power. And that's just, I was like, I'm ready for Anthy to do something. I'm ready for Anthy to grow a spine and do something, because this is somebody you care about and you're not doing anything. Do something. Like, just fucking do something. Like, throw the earrings away or do something. Or it's so frustrating. I know that's the whole theme of the show, is that people in power, once they're convinced by a male authority figure that they don't have power anymore, then they get subjugated and blah, 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 blah. That theme is as clear as day to me, but it's so frustrating because it's so outdated. It's like, just fucking do something. Somebody commented, they're like, you swear a lot in your videos now. There was a time when I would be so hesitant to drop the F-bomb in a video. I would be so hesitant, and I would never do it. This series, I'm so frustrated that it's just like, I don't ever say the F word in real life, so I reserve it just for these videos. I save up all of my bombs to drop for Revolutionary Girl Utena, clearly. Anthy's frustrating when she says, never mind, I don't know, because she does. And she actively chooses not to say it for whatever reason, right? For whatever reason. And why, I don't understand with the Rose Bride if she can't. The thing that's so frustrating is the series has not made it clear that Anthy can or cannot say things. They say the Rose Bride has no will of her own, but then she does things that contradict that statement. So it's like, make up your mind, show. Does she have will of her own? Does she not have will of her own? Spell that. We're 35 episodes in. Spell that out for us. Maybe a little clearer, that she can't do anything. If the show had a scene where Anthy actively tried to say something and she was stopped by, like, the Rose Bride ability stopped her, or Akio stopped her, then I would be forgiving. Then I'd be like, okay, nope, it's clear. She can't say anything, whatever. But because the show hasn't shown us that, we as the audience don't know, is Anthy deliberately choosing not to say things, or can she literally not? And when Utena's like on the verge, I'm like, do you not? And maybe Anthy doesn't realize that it's Utena. Maybe in the last episode where Anthy was like, who are you? Maybe Anthy hadn't realized that Utena was the girl that she saw that time ago until now. Maybe she doesn't know. Maybe she has no clue. Maybe she's as blind as the others. But it's so fucking frustrating. The other thing that is more frustrating, I mean, Utena seeing the two people on the bicycle from the past, I'm curious if when Saionji and Touga show up to duel her, because it seems like they're going to be together, which I'm here for Saionji and Touga being together because they're my ship. But when she's trying to remember anything and remembers the water, and she's like, I can't seem to remember, and her placing her hand in the water and everything is interesting, which is interesting indeed. I don't know. I don't like some of the sexualized shots in this, like of like her crotch by the bucket and everything, and of Anthy's thigh gap. And I know it's just part of the series, but it's the sexualization. And they do it a lot with Akio in this episode, and a lot with Touga and Saionji. It's played up for laughs. With Touga and Saionji at the end, it's played as kind of a farce where they're both standing there shirtless with their shirts flapping the breeze. And it's like a euphemism for them possibly fooling around, which they both seem to care for each other. I'm for it. But with Akio, it gets really grotesque and really over the top and weird. and then it's not fun anymore. When Anthy's like, a dream, and she's like, well, maybe it isn't. Maybe Anthy doesn't know that it's Utena. Maybe Anthy doesn't know that Utena is the one that said she was going to be Anthy's prince. Maybe Anthy has no idea. And maybe Utena and her are both in the dark and they both can't remember. And I would be forgiving of that if that were the case. If Anthy has had no clue that Utena is that same girl from that previous memory and it's not clicked to her that that's who it is, and they're just both like star-crossed lovers that have been joined together by fate after all this time, I would be fine with that. The thing that I don't like, and the thing that weirds me out beyond all reprieve, is that these two get really super close, and then Akio shows up to break them up, which I don't understand why. The Dios Akio thing, we've already talked about that. The thing that pisses me off is that why is Utena still having a crush on Akio when I thought we established in episode 33 that him sexually assaulting her was a bad thing and that she was uncomfortable with it? Why is she okay with that? And it makes me emotional again. And I'm trying not to be. I really am. But it makes me so frustrated because it's like, why is she okay with him being around her and giving her gifts and all of this? And I know somebody's going to say, they're like, well, that's how grooming works. And I'm sure somebody will say, well, that's how grooming works. That's how all that happens. And I get it. I understand it. I've experienced that. But there's just this disconnect where, I'm sorry, but if you're going to show her being uncomfortable in episode 33, to follow it up in 34 and 35 with her being fine, with her getting her these gifts and then not being uncomfortable with it, it just feels wrong and dirty, and it's just frustrating. And I hate what that represents, you know? So it's just very frustrating. And I keep wanting her in this episode, every time he comes around, like if she was still like nervous around him or uncomfortable, then I would understand that she still feels like she doesn't have any authority or power over him. But she's so happy around him. And I'm like, does she not remember what happened? Why is she so okay being around him? It feels like, and I know that this isn't the message, but it feels like it makes that okay that it happened. And I know that that's not the case. But again, when you have people writing these stories that haven't experienced that, then it just feels like they're like, oh, well, people, they just get over it and they're fine with it. Like that's not true. And it's like, once that happens, I can't imagine a scenario where you would be just blushy faced and accepting gifts and being comfortable around being with them. Like at no point in this episode was she nervous around him. Like at least in the last episode, she kind of felt a little more distant. She was like, I don't know. I don't really want to be around you like this. And I was like, okay, well, that makes sense. Like it was frustrating, but I was like, okay, that makes sense that she doesn't want to be as comfortable around him because of what happened. But here it's like we totally forgot everything that happened in episode 33. It's like all of that experience is gone. And we're back to before episode 33 when she was comfortable being around him. And it feels like such a disservice to the act that happened to her. And it feels like we just swept it under the rug, like it's not important. And I hate that. I honestly hate that. I hate that action is so awful that we're just not even going to acknowledge it anymore. We're just going to treat it like it never happened and it's okay. And it's not. And I'm sorry. I was so angry in this episode. And I'm sure that's the intent, but it feels so, I don't know, it feels offensive almost that the writers don't even acknowledge it, that they don't even make her character have any reaction that would be realistic because it's not realistic. What she did in this episode is not realistic behavior. Even if you were groomed, if you were uncomfortable when that action happened, I'm sorry, but fucking real life, you will be uncomfortable around that person. And for her to just completely ignore, and not only ignore, but to completely be like head over heels for him after what he's done and how you seem to be uncomfortable with it, it just feels insulting. And that's what I got on that. God. And I'm sure people in the comments will be like, well, you're too emotionally compromised. And it's like, well, yeah. Yeah, I am. Just a wee bit. But anyway, and it's so frustrating because he takes her away from Anthy. And I do feel bad for Anthy. Don't get me wrong. I know the last several episodes that as he takes Utena away, the last several episodes, I know I'm harsh on Anthy, but I'm harsh on Anthy because I'm like, I want to know Anthy is thinking, and I want to know, like, I want Anthy to do something. Like, I feel bad for Anthy, and I don't want it to seem like I don't. I feel bad for her, but I'm so pissed because she's watching this happen, and we don't know if she thinks she's powerless. We don't know if she thinks she can't do anything. We don't know if she's okay with this. We don't know a single thing about Anthy. And to watch her just sit there and let this happen to somebody that she supposedly cares about, but it's like, do something, it's just so frustrating. And again, I want to root for them as a couple, but they're such bakas. And I'm like, anyway. So we have the poppy fields. And I don't know why Akio thinks that Anthy and Utena aren't going to be friends anymore. I don't know why that is. I feel like at some point what he's doing is he's setting up for Anthy to maybe say something like, hey, Akio's a bad person. And I swear to you, if Utena defends him, and if Utena's like, well, we can't be friends if you don't like your own brother, then I'm like, and I feel like that's where this is headed. And I'm really sad about that, and I don't want that to happen, but it's like in the back of my mind, I'm like, why, show? Why? But it's very frustrating. And then, of course, there's the car. I don't know if the maze of the poppies mean anything. I know poppies make people go to sleep in Wizard of Oz, and they're tied to dreams in the Wizard of Oz. So I don't know if that is a connection to this being like a dream and this being like not real or whatever. But of course, the sex car is just right out of reach. It's just right off to the side, right? And he talks about poppies. And then she's like, what are you playing at? And it's like he's wanting sex. Is like he's wanting to get at her being with him and not being with Anthy. So then we have Touga saying he's worried about Utena, which, you know what? Touga is as slimy as he comes, but if he's worried about Utena, at least somebody is vocally being worried. I mean, Anthy isn't saying a damn thing, and I know that the probability is that she can't say a damn thing, but I wish the show would be a little bit more clear about that. But at least Touga's saying something about it. At least he's vocalizing, like, maybe I am worried about her, And then he does this photo shoot with the car, and we see Akio immediately transition. So, not transition like you would think he would. not transition in the way that you think he would, But he goes from being in his chairman outfit. To talking with Touga. And as Toga's taking pictures, the thing that's super creepy is he immediately transitions. There's no like pause for us, the viewer. The flash happens and he goes to being in his prince outfit, versus being in the chairman outfit and his hair's all down. And then Toga's like, well, I'm going to be her opponent in the next duel, so I need to shake her up a bit. And he's like, well, this will all work out then because I have a plan to shake things up. Also, the car being on the platform with all the other cars under it. Like just the cars almost feel like representations of all the duels that they've previously had and all of the victims that they've previously had. And here's the final one, which we said last episode was the Duel of Revolution. That was where this was going from episode 13. It also reminds me of Brave Little Toaster and the song Worthless reminds me of that. So then, and during this portion here, I'm gonna get my little thing to come up here. He's like, could you do me a favor? He's like, I just want you to get her a gift and say it's from me. which feels like a play on, I was like, is Akio trying to like get Touga jealous and convince him to like do the duel, which it works, but is it like just trying to make a man jealous because that's how he thinks, you know, people are? Also, Akio with his pants undone, like stroking his breast is really, really awkward. And when Touga like lowers the camera while he's like fondling himself, he's like, what the fuck? You know, in that moment, he's like, well, she's not gonna like gifts. And she's like, well, no, she will, because she's treasuring an old ring given to her by a man. Which is supposedly from him. I don't know. I don't know if Akio, like I said last episode, I don't want Akio redeemed. I don't think he's redeemable at this point. I don't like the idea of people like him being redeemed and being forgiven of their actions without responsibility taken for them. So, nope, I don't like that at all. And so then he hops up onto the car like he would during any sex drive. And him licking the poppy. And the poppy, you could say, is like a representation of like a woman's vagina or something, which is gross. And him like tearing off the petal with his teeth. Gross. Hate it. Go die in a ditch. The thing with Saionji, here's the thing. The thing with Touga and the carrot. I'm like, instantly I thought of Saionji. But I also thought like the carrot representing like, is it a penis? You're not, you know, you sitting there gnawing on that carrot, you know, is pretty phallic in itself. But also, why would you have the carrot? Like, what is the deal? Why is that there? What does that represent other than being something phallic and making me think of Saionji? Would you rather be gnawing on Saionji's carrot than dealing with Utena right now? Maybe. But I am glad at least that Wakaba was just as against Touga as she's always been. Wish she'd be like that with Akio. That'd be great. And then Utena's like, these don't really seem like they suit me. But then she puts them on and has them. And then, of course, Toga's like, you know, is this really her? And since they're from Akio, that's the only reason she accepts them. Which is really frustrating, right? Because the idea of Akio trying to change Utena, I have no problem with Utena. I've said this before in this series. I have no problem with her expressing her femininity. I think that's really, I think her expressing her femininity is really awesome because, you know, gender is not, it's a lot more dynamic than just male and female and pants and skirts. Like it's way more than that. And so I like the idea of Utena expressing her femininity. But when it's someone else telling you to do it and it's not you yourself, or if you're doing it because you want to impress someone else and you're not being true to yourself, then, I mean, that's kind of also into what Dios told her before, being like, you need to be, as long as you remain true to yourself and noble, you'll be able to rescue Anthy. Well, if she's conforming to what a man wants her to be and not being true to herself, then she's not going to be able to rescue Anthy. And now I wonder if the OP back in the first, or the ED back in the first ED, when it was both Utena and Anthy in the dresses with the prince, is that Anthy and Akio, and is it Utena and Akio, and she becomes a princess with the pink dress on to conform to what Akio wants for her? My thing is, if she does that for him, then what? Is that going to be so that he can get the power of the prince back? I feel like, again, I was like, is the story that was told by the prince to Utena from the start a true story, or did he fabricate parts of it and make it seem like it was a good thing that he was rescuing all the princesses? It just, part of the story feels like we're missing something, or it's been twisted and it's not being told correctly. And I don't know which it is, but I hate the idea that Utena wears the earrings and that she likes the earrings, even though they're conforming her in a way that's not her own decision. Also, we get the two horses. We get the black horse and the white horse that are in the OP. Saionji, or not Saionji, Touga and Akio are on them instead of Utena and Anthy. So I'm not sure at what point we'll get that to change. But I do think when he tells her, he's like, you know, you're an athlete. I'm like, athletics and horseback riding are not the same thing. You can be great at horseback riding, but still not be, you know, a good basketball player. So vice versa. But of course, she gets thrown off the horse, and who catches her but Akio? Now, for some reason, again, when Saionji tells Touga, you are Akio's lapdog, I feel like the horseback riding scene was the prime example of that, because Saionji's like, oh, Akio told you to go take her on horseback riding, and you were just like, okay, sure, I'll do that, even though you don't know why. And then you're surprised when Akio shows up and rescues her like a damsel in distress. I mean, really? Really? And of course, he shows up on the white horse, just like a prince would. Now, here's the thing. The part of the manipulation that's so devious and that's so disgusting is that he is preying on all of these imageries that she's bought into. So from the very beginning, when we got the story of the prince on the white horse, in the memory, he's not on no damn horse at all. But here he shows up on the white horse. So Akio is literally molding himself to present himself as the prince that she would want to be rescued by. Because heaven forbid we have women that can save themselves. Am I right, bros? Heaven forbid we have that. That's literally what he's doing. I mean, it's so obvious. And she's falling right into it. And it's like, Anthy, you gonna speak up? I'm curious what Touga's gonna do next episode in the duel. If he would speak up and say something about it, because if anybody needs to be telling what Akio has been doing this entire time, Touga's the one who's been behind the scenes setting everything up. All of the sex card drives, setting up all of the stuff with End of the World and the letters. Touga has been behind all of it. So if Touga would come out and, well, if he would come out, he'd be a lot happier. But if he would just state to Utena what's going on and let her know and explain all of that to her, that's another thing that's frustrating about this series. Half these characters in this episode know what the fuck is going on, but they are actively choosing to not say a damn thing, when if they spoke words, they could solve this whole series. And it's like, why won't you all speak up? Damn it. And I know why they aren't, but it's so frustrating. So yeah. And then Touga, like, a part of me would hope that Touga is mildly disgusted seeing Akio take advantage of Utena and realizing how he is. Because the thing about it is, and I said this kind of during the reaction, during the sex drives, Akio's never made the move on anybody. He's always let the people in his car make the moves on themselves. Now, maybe he's made a move on Touga, which for Touga would maybe make Touga jealous in that regard, possibly. But he's never done that. And here he's making a move on somebody. And a part of me would hope that Touga would realize that's really gross and wrong, and he shouldn't be doing that. But then the other part of me is thinking, no, Toga's just like, well, it should be me doing that, not you. And it's like, fuck. I can't believe I've said the F-bomb so many times. I need to stop. But it's so annoying. And then Touga, of course, rather than confront, I feel like the girl giving him the letter is a prime example of, instead of Touga confronting his actual feelings and revealing what he actually thinks, he just makes out with her. And all of his making out with girls and playboy attitude is to hide his actual emotions and how he actually feels. And he says that he likes Utena, but what I think he actually feels is a sense of camaraderie and a sense of connection to Utena, because she, like him, are repressed in their actual emotions and have not found a way to communicate them. And that's why he feels connected to her. And Saionji kind of hints around at that, being like, well, do you like her, or is this about something else? And it's about something else, which makes me think that his antics in the duel are not going to be successful and he's not going to beat her. But if he doesn't beat her, is Akio going to take advantage and try to, like, make this the last duel? And what do we do with that? We only have 36, 37. We only have 4 episodes left. And if next episode is all about their duel, then what do we do with the last 3 episodes? I don't know. I don't feel like I want this story to end happy. If you all made me watch this long ass series for it to not end happily with the two of them, then I'm going to be so pissed. And I will never take your suggestions on magical girl shows again. Anyway, so the letter from the girl with the purple butterfly, the butterfly reminded me of Mikage. And it also reminded me of the butterfly on the poppy reminded me of Mikage and kind of a metamorphosis. Also, when we've seen the butterfly with Mikage, it showed his true feelings. And right after this, he goes to fight with Saionji, which again, showing his true feelings. The only animation bit I didn't care for in this episode was the kendo fight, because it's just a repeat and reusage of the animation from last episode, which felt lazy to me. But this series also kind of gets around it because it's the time loops. They're like, oh, we're just looping time over and over again. See, isn't that fun? Isn't that funny? Isn't that a trick that we used? And I'm like, fine. But anyway, Saionji kind of hits the nail on the head, though. What I really liked about Saionji was he's like, here's how you present yourself, but honestly, you are not the person you present yourself. And he's like, you've never really seemed like you've loved anyone. The thing that's so frustrating for me in this episode, too, is that Touga never even mentions Nanami. Never even brings Nanami up. Like his sister, she never enters his flashbacks. It's all about him and Utena. And he becomes kind of like tunnel visioned, which I don't know if Akio does that with people and making them tunnel visioned, because it seems to be that way with Utena right now and her not, sensing Anthy. So whatever. But anyway, and then we have the two swords that are shown, the swords that Saionji and that could be used by Saionji and Touga. I would support and ship Saionji and Touga instantly. I really think they should be together because I think they really are, connected. The Shadow Girls skit was pretty on the nose. It was talking about the Playboy fisherman and how the one fish he can't get, that's the one that enamors him the most, which ties to Touga and Utena and all of this. So then we have Anthy, right? And when she goes out and sees Utena, I do love that rose lamp, though. That rose lamp is great. And she sees that she has the earrings, and she's like, then she flashes back to seeing the horse. And he's like, they're big, but they're very gentle. Which he's obviously making a reference to himself, saying, well, yeah, this horse is really big, but it's really gentle. Like me. You can totally trust me. And I'm like, I guess this feels out of order, because if he hadn't already assaulted her, then I would feel like this would be part of that progression. But since that moment's already happened, has she forgotten about this? Does she not remember it? Because it feels like this episode should come before that whole thing. Right? And then she tips the ring and she says it's too much. A prince on an actual white horse. And he says, well, they're very timid creatures. You have to communicate with them well and build their trust in you. And which is exactly what he's been doing to her this whole time and grooming her. And that's when Anthy shows up and sees her with the earrings. If I was Anthy, I would have thrown those earrings away. I would have thrown them away. But I don't know if she can do that or not. I feel bad for Anthy. I do. I wish she'd do something about it. I'd feel less bad for her if she'd do something about it. But she can't. For whatever reason. I wish the show would tell us why she can't do things. And I know they've said the Rose Bride can't do things, but she's contradicted that. So I need them to reinforce that. But she is drawn beautifully in that scene. And then we see the whole I've won the game. So Akio thinks he's gotten Utena over to her side with the earrings. Now, cactuses, I did look this up before the discussion. Cactuses and cactus blossoms represent lust in Japanese culture. If you notice, though, all of the cactuses around Akio, none of them have blooms. He's like, I think she'd make a charming princess. A princess, not a prince. So basically, he doesn't want Utena to be someone that can save herself. He wants her to be reliant upon him, which is very predatory and not cool. And he's like, don't you agree? And Touga says he's not sure, which is growth for Touga. And then we see the cactus he's holding and has a blossom, which means he does kind of lust for Utena a little bit. So, yeah. I also don't like Akio holding the one cactus that looks phallic, like he's holding a boner. Will we have a princess who will revolutionize the world? But he's like, I hope that you'll still win. And Toga's like, yeah, I bet you do. Uh-huh. So then him and Saionji meet upstairs just by themselves in the secret council room. And we go back to Utena telling Touga that living on makes me sick. Why does everyone go on living when they all have to die? There's no such thing as something eternal. So I've had enough. I'm never coming out of the coffin. So going back to the idea that Utena saying that if I can't have, if I can't have something eternal, or if I can't be my own person, if I can't save myself, then there's no point in living, which not being able to be yourself is definitely a reason why you wouldn't want to exist. So I could see why Touga would relate to Utena in that moment, and him telling Saionji, the girl we found in the coffin, she's still there. She's not able, and I do like Touga saying that she's not able to be herself. So he's like, I have to save her and I'll have to defeat her to do that. And again, it's that prince mentality. Again, instead of helping her save herself, he's like, well, I have to be the one to do it. And it's like, no, just tell Utena how to save herself. Tell her she needs to do it herself and let her do it herself. You don't have to save her. You're not her prince. That's the whole concept of princess is kind of stupid. And then Saionji's like, Saionji's like, are you saying you love her? Because otherwise, are we going to do stuff up here? And Touga's like, he's like, well, I wonder. I mean, I think that he may be attracted to her, but he's like, I'm not sure. I think he's attracted to the idea of her. Someone that isn't girly. And then I love the cameras increasing on all sides of them taking photos. Again, you have the camera that Touga had that was doing the homoerotic photographs of Akio. And then now you have all the cameras surrounding Saionji and Touga. So it's kind of the same motif, right? We've dueled as we were instructed to, but now we have the final letter. We don't need to play the games anymore. So somebody shows up to randomly hand them tea. And Saionji's like, well, you're his little lapdog, so of course you wouldn't need a letter. But are you content with that? And Saionji and Touga just being shirtless, having their moment on the roof. Like, why not? And then he's like, why do you serve him the way you do? And he's like, because he saved her. And I wanted to be like him. I want to be like him. I want power like he has. And they're like both very... They can't on screen show us that Saionji and Touga are getting it on or having sexual relations, but the body language, I mean, we all know that they are. Maybe. And also I think it's fitting that as we see the rose, it's kind of like this rainbow mosaic rose. I know that there's different greens, blues, and reds. Maybe the chairman did save her that time, but she's still trapped in that coffin. And Touga's like, and then Saionji says, no, it's not just her. The three of us were all trapped in our coffins. Maybe he's saying we all as in humanity, or maybe he's just referring to the three of them. But, and then I do love the montage of the two of them when they're younger looking at themselves. And then they're looking towards the dueling arena. I mean, I loved this ending montage with Saionji and Touga. I'm like, I ship them so hardcore. So I love the ending of them contemplating on this final duel. The one thing I don't understand is what is Choo Choo's point? Because at this point, I'm like, why is Choo Choo there? Why is he the same color as Akio's hair? Why does he have the same earring? Is he just a monkey and he's there for no reason? What does he represent? And then for a split second, Utena, she's showing off her earrings to Anthy. But she doesn't ask Anthy what she thinks of the earrings. She just asks Choo Choo, which is kind of sad. But then when she looks over at Anthy, that's when she sees Anthy being speared by all of the swords, looking like thorns coming out of her. And Anthy asks if something's wrong. And then she says no. But why, y'all? But why? I just... This episode's so frustrating. I just want the series to have a happy ending. But with only 4 episodes left, and the whole next episode is going to be about that damn duel, I don't know how in 3 episodes they can turn this whole thing around. I just have no clue how they would do it. And maybe it's going to be this big thing that I don't even expect. But I don't know. The one episode with, episode 34, they did say that without the prince, there was just darkness. And Akio is called the prince who runs the night. It just all feels like we're just about to open the gates of hell. And I don't like where that's headed. And I don't know what to do with that. So, y'all. I know you can't spoil me, but I am still curious to know your comments down below. I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. And yeah, I'll be back very soon with more reactions. Bye.